We purchased our first home, San Jose, California, in January of 1970. It was a new house we bought for about $28,000, which seemed like a fortune at the time. We were very excited about fixing it up, making it our home. After the rainy season was over, we started on the backyard. We had purchased a truckload of beautiful used bricks that had been part of an old brickworks chimney recently torn down to make room for more houses. The bricks were over 100 years old, and we were excited about having some local history as a part of our landscaping. As a child, I used to go to that brickworks and stand looking up at the chimney. It seemed to go all the way to heaven. It was the tallest chimney I had ever seen. And now we would have some of those very bricks in our own backyard. Once we had the bricks and a plan on how to use them, a small brick patio outside our bedroom, and a retaining wall across most of the backyard, we quickly figured out we were going to need a lot of sand to complete the job. About 10 miles from our home was a large sand quarry. So early one morning, the kids and I hopped in the car and drove out to buy some sand. When we got to the quarry, I saw the dispatcher's office, actually a shack, on the far side of a small parking lot. I parked next to it and went inside, leaving the kids in the car. The dispatcher was an older guy with a friendly grin. "What can I do for you? Lost? Need directions?" he said as I entered the office. "No, we're okay." I gestured out the office to my car with my three kids sitting patiently inside. "We were wondering if we could buy some sand." He looked at me like I was crazy. "Only if you want enough to fill up one of my dump trucks." At this precise moment, another man walked into the office, smiled, and said to the dispatcher, "There's nothing for me to do here today, Bob. I'll check back with you tomorrow." The dispatcher looked at him, then back at me, and I'd swear I saw a light come on over his head. "Joe, how do you feel about taking a load of sand by this guy's house on your way home?" "Where do you live?" Joe asked. "Near the corner of Blossom Hill and Cottle, about 10 miles from here." "No problem." "Wow, thanks a lot." I turned to Bob and asked, "How much do I owe you?" "You can have the sand. Consider it a gift. Ask Joe what he wants for delivering it." I looked over at Joe. "Got a spare six-pack?" he asked. Sure. This was working out just great. Bob reached for his mic. "Sam, you there?" "Yep." "Would you bring a shovel full up here and drop it in Joe's pickup?" "I'm on my way." Within a couple of minutes, the biggest earth mover I ever saw came around the corner from the quarry. The tires alone were twice as tall as our car. I could see the kids, Jeff 9, John 6, and Bryn 3, pointing out the window, saucer-eyed, like me. Attached to the earth mover was a scoop so big it could have held Joe's truck with room to spare. And Joe's truck was the largest pickup I'd ever seen. The scoop was only half full, but it held enough sand to fill the truck, enough sand to fill our driveway. Sam drove that monster machine like he was part of it. Before I knew it, he was next to the truck, dumping his load. Wham, bam, thank you, Sam. I don't think he spilled a drop on the ground. I stood there in awe and watched as the truck bounced up and down on its shock absorbers a couple of times. Joe hopped into his truck and hollered, "Lead the way!" That snapped me into action. I jumped into our station wagon, started it up, and quickly shifted into gear. We headed home with Joe following, carrying all the sand I needed to finish up the backyard. When we got home, I ran into the house, found Kathy, and said excitedly, "Can you run over to the store? I just got a pickup full of sand for the price of a six-pack." "How'd that happen?" she asked. "I'll tell you later. Right now, I have to help Joe unload his pickup." I grabbed a couple of shovels, and Kathy left for the store. She got back just as we were finishing. Joe drove off with his beer, and Kathy and I stood there looking at a pile of sand that really did fill our driveway. Then the realization of what I had done hit me. I was working the swing shift. I was due at work in just over an hour at 11:30 a.m. How was I going to get this sand moved to the backyard? "You know, all this sand has got to be moved to the backyard," Kathy echoed my thoughts. I know, but I have to go to work now and won't be home until late tonight. Tomorrow and Saturday I work all day. I think it will have to wait until Sunday. I don't like the idea of having this sand here for 3 days. What if it rains? Then we'll really have a mess. I don't like it either. But what are we going to do? I saw an opportunity to get the sand and I jumped on it. Did I do the wrong thing? No, but then Jeff, who had been listening intently to our conversation, piped up. I can move the sand to the backyard for you. I looked at him and his 9-year-old body. He was a healthy kid, but a little on the skinny side. He stood there in his blue shorts and tennis shoes, no shirt. His golden hair, bleached from the sun, was hanging down over his forehead. He looked up at me expectantly, brown eyes wide with anticipation, waiting for my response. I looked over at the pile of sand and thought, there is no way this kid can do this job. Then very quickly I realized that while he couldn't do the whole job, whatever he did move, I wouldn't have to. So I said, okay, I'll pay you $5 for the job. You don't have to pay me, Dad, he responded. I got down on one knee so I could look him in the eye and said, let's make a contract. You finish the job and I'll pay you $5. Okay? Okay, it's a deal, he said with youthful enthusiasm, and we shook hands. I went in and got ready for work. When I left home, I noticed Jeff was already hard at it, using my smaller shovel to load the big construction wheelbarrow we had. I remember thinking he would have a problem handling it, especially when it was full of sand. About 10:30 p.m., I arrived home from a long day and habitually drove into our driveway. As I got out of the car, I noticed the driveway was wet and wondered who had hosed it down. Then I remembered the sand. It was all gone. Had Jeff moved all that sand by himself? As Kathy heard me come in the door, she looked up and exclaimed, you're going to pay Jeff more than $5. Did he move all that sand by himself? You bet he did. He worked like a trooper. He started before he left to work. I insisted he have lunch, and then he worked straight through to dinner without stopping. I even had trouble getting him to stop for dinner. And it wasn't easy. He couldn't handle our wheelbarrow, but instead of giving up, he searched the neighborhood for a smaller one, going door to door. A lady down the street let him use her garden wheelbarrow. Then he had to navigate the construction we're doing on the side of the house. It was an obstacle course. It almost broke my heart every time he took a wheelbarrow full to the backyard. He finally finished at about 7:30 p.m. and still wouldn't come in until the driveway was hosed down. He told me, Dad won't be happy if he comes home, and the driveway has sand on it. I felt guilty. I hadn't believed in him, had doubted he would finish the job. That's why I had offered the money as an additional incentive. Now I felt cheap and small, but what was important was that Jeff had done it. He'd finished what he started. I was real proud of him. The next morning, I thanked him for all his hard work and gave him a crisp $20 bill. Jeff, you did a terrific job. You earned the extra money. I'm proud of you. Gee, thanks, Dad. He was thrilled and obviously proud of himself, too. How did you do such a big job without any help? I asked. He looked up at me, hesitated for a second, and said matter-of-factly, one shovelful at a time.